The galaxy had been at peace for 40,000 years. 12 species shared the stars, traded goods, and settled their differences with words instead of weapons. They called their union the Galactic Concord, and they believed they had learned all there was to learn about the universe. They were wrong. Ambassador stood before the High Council, her blue skin pale with worry. She was a species known for feeling the emotions of others. Right now, she felt fear spreading through the chamber like cold water. "The sensors do not lie," she said. "Something is happening at the edge of the galaxy. The energy readings match nothing in our records." Archon slammed his fist on the table. He was a warrior species with scales like black armor and eyes like burning coals. His people respected strength above all things. "Then we send warships," he growled. "We find out what it is and we destroy it." "And if we cannot destroy it?" asked a soft voice. Everyone turned to look at 12. The ancient machine sat motionless in its hover chair, its metal body covered in symbols no living species could read. 12 was a synthetic being, built long ago by makers unknown. It claimed to have memories from before the Great Silence, that strange period 38,000 years ago when something had erased vast portions of galactic history. "What do you mean?" Archon demanded. 12's eyes glowed brighter. "I mean that I have seen these energy patterns before, in fragments of data so old they are almost dust. They match the signature of the Void Devourers." Silence fell over the chamber. Every child in the Concord knew the stories of the Void Devourers. They were monsters from beyond the galaxy, creatures that ate matter and energy and light itself. According to legend, they had nearly consumed everything 40,000 years ago. But they were just legends, scary stories to tell children. "Impossible," said Archon, but his voice was not as strong as before. "The Void Devourers are myths." "So were humans," 12 replied. "And yet the myths say it was humans who stopped the Devourers. Humans who sealed them away in a prison between dimensions. Humans who sacrificed their entire civilization to save a galaxy that would forget them." Ambassador felt her heart beat faster. She had always been fascinated by the human legends. Unlike other myths, human stories appeared in the ancient records of every species, always telling the same tale. A small species from a small world in a remote spiral arm who had stood against the darkness when all others fled. "If the Void Devourers are returning," she said slowly, "then we must find out if humans still exist." Archon laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You want to search for ghosts. Humans died 40,000 years ago, if they ever lived at all." "The myths say they came from the Sol system," 12 said. "Third planet from a yellow star. I have the coordinates in my oldest memory files. Perhaps we should look before we decide they are ghosts." The council argued for hours. Some wanted to focus only on military preparation. Others wanted to pretend nothing was wrong. But in the end, Ambassador convinced them to do both. They would build their defenses, and they would send an expedition to Sol. Volunteered to lead the expedition herself. She took a small ship and a crew of scientists and historians. The journey took 3 weeks through hyperspace, each day feeling longer than the last. When they finally arrived at Sol, stood at the viewport and stared at what remained. The system was dead. 8 planets orbited a yellow sun, but none of them held life. The third planet, the one called Earth in the legends, was a brown and gray sphere covered in ancient craters. Whatever oceans it once had were long gone. Whatever forests and cities and people it once held had turned to dust thousands of years ago. "Scan everything," ordered. "There must be something left." Her crew searched for 2 days. They found ruins on Earth, on the 4th planet, on several moons. Ruins of cities and factories and spaceports, all of them empty, all of them stripped of anything useful. It was as if the humans had packed up everything they owned and left. But left for where? On the 3rd day, one of the scientists found something on Earth. a structure that had survived when everything else had crumbled. It stood on a high mountain, a monument of pure black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It was tall as a skyscraper and shaped like a blade pointing at the sky. Took a shuttle down to examine it herself. As she approached, she saw that the monument was covered in writing, thousands of lines of text in a language she had never seen before. 12, she called through her communicator. I am sending you images. Can you translate? There was a long pause. When the synthetic spoke again, its voice was strange, almost emotional. Yes, 12 said, this is human language. One of them, at least, they called it English. What does it say? Another pause. It says many things. Names, I think, millions of names. Perhaps everyone who ever lived on this world. But at the very top there is a message. Read it to me. 12 spoke the words slowly, as if they carried great weight. We have not abandoned you. We remember our promise. When the darkness rises again, do not despair. Do not surrender. Look to the black between stars. We will be waiting. Felt cold despite her suit's temperature control. She read the words again with her own eyes, even though she could not understand them. Someone had carved this message into stone meant to last forever. Someone had wanted future generations to find it. The black between stars, she whispered. What does that mean? I do not know, 12 admitted. But I suggest we find out quickly, because my sensors are detecting something at the edge of the Sol system, energy signatures that match the anomaly at the galactic rim. Ran back to her shuttle. As it lifted off, she looked down at the black monument one last time. The humans had left a promise carved in stone. After 40,000 years, someone was coming to collect. She only hoped that the ones who wrote those words were still alive to keep it. The first colony to fall was called New Dawn. It was a small world on the galactic edge, home to 3 million who had built farms and schools and a peaceful life far from the busy core worlds. They had 12 minutes of warning before the void devourers arrived. The creatures came through tears in space itself, rips in reality that bled darkness. They were not ships in any normal sense. They were living things, each one the size of a mountain with bodies made of shadow and hunger. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. New Dawn sent out a distress signal. By the time the conquered fleet arrived, there was nothing left. Not the buildings, not the soil, not even the atmosphere. Just a dead rock floating in space where a living world had been hours before. 3 weeks later, 2 more colonies vanished, then 5 more, then an entire system. Fleet Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the tactical display turn red, one light at a time. She was a species that evolved in high gravity, which made her short and dense and strong as stone. Her people did not panic easily, but even she felt fear crawling up her spine. Analysis complete, her tactical officer reported. Our weapons inflict damage, but the devourers regenerate faster than we can hurt them. They adapt to every attack pattern within minutes. We have not found a single weakness. Keep trying, ordered, but she knew it was hopeless. The conquered had built its military for peacekeeping, not war. They had never faced an enemy like this. On the conquered, panic was spreading. Ambassador watched crowds fill the streets, demanding answers the council could not give. Some species talked about fleeing the galaxy entirely. Others talked about surrender, about offering tribute to the devourers in exchange for survival. But the devourers did not want tribute. They wanted everything. Spent every waking hour studying the monument's message. Looked to the black between stars. What did it mean? She searched through every archive, every ancient database, every fragment of pre-silence history she could find. 12 helped her. The old machine had grown quiet since their visit to Earth, as if it was remembering things it had long forgotten. There is something, 12 said one night. A reference I almost missed. It mentions a region of space that all ancient species avoided. a place marked on old star maps as forbidden, though no one recorded why. Where asked. 12 sent coordinates to her screen. Frowned. According to every modern map, there was nothing at those coordinates, just empty space far from any star or planet. The black between stars, she whispered. Perhaps, 12 said, but I must warn you. Several ancient records mention this region with great fear. Whatever is there, our ancestors wanted nothing to do with it. Made her decision immediately. She took a small ship, told no one where she was going, and flew toward the forbidden coordinates. The journey took 4 days. Each day, she received reports of more colonies falling, more ships destroyed, more species losing hope. When she finally arrived, her sensors showed exactly what the maps predicted. Nothing. Empty space in every direction. No planets, no stations, no ships, no debris. Just the cold void between distant stars. But something felt wrong. She could sense emotions even through the walls of her ship. And right now, she sensed something vast and patient waiting in the darkness, watching her. She powered down her sensors. She turned off her lights. She went to the viewport and looked out with nothing but her own eyes. At first she saw only stars. Then her eyes adjusted, and she realized that some of the stars were not stars at all. They were ships, thousands of them, tens of thousands. Each one was kilometers long, covered in dark armor that drank light like water. They hung in perfect formation, so still they might have been dead, but knew they were not dead. She could feel minds inside them, ancient minds, tired minds, minds that had been waiting for a very, very long time. As she watched, lights began to flicker on across the nearest ship. Then the next ship. Then the next. Running lights and engine glows and weapon ports, spreading across the fleet like a wave of waking fireflies. Her communication system crackled with static. Then a voice spoke, using a language her translator struggled with before finding a match. English, the same language as the monument. Unknown vessel, you have entered human space. Identify yourself and state your purpose. His hands shook as she opened the channel. My name is Ambassador of the Galactic Concord. I found your monument on Earth. I followed your message. Silence, then, the monument, you can read it. A friend translated it for me. It said to look to the black between stars. It said you would be waiting. More silence. Felt the ancient mind stirring, processing, deciding. The seal has broken, the voice said. It was not a question. The devourers have returned. Yes, they are destroying everything. We cannot stop them. Please, if you are truly humans, if the legends are true, we need your help. The longest silence yet, counted her heartbeats, 10, 20, 30. Finally the voice spoke again. Understood, tell your people to hold their positions. We are coming. Across the dark fleet, engines that had slept roared to life. 10,000 ships began to move, turning toward the distant galaxy with slow and terrible purpose. Opened a channel to Admiral. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The legends were true, and they are coming. The human ship that came to collect Ambassador was nothing like the vessels of the conquered. It was brutal and sharp, every line designed for war. No windows, no decorations, no wasted space. It looked like a weapon shaped into the form of a ship. Inside was worse. The corridors were narrow and gray. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and cold metal. Saw no art on the walls, no plants, no color of any kind. Everything was functional. Everything had a purpose. Nothing existed simply to be beautiful. The humans themselves were smaller than she expected. They stood upright on 2 legs, with soft skin in shades from pale to dark brown. Their faces were expressive but guarded, as if they had forgotten how to smile. They brought her to their leader. High Commander was an old woman with gray hair cut short and eyes like chips of ice. She wore the same plain uniform as everyone else, marked only by a small symbol on her shoulder. She sat behind a bare metal desk in a room with no windows. Ambassador, she said. Her voice was flat and tired. Sit. Sat, she tried to sense the commander's emotions but was like a wall of stone. Cold, controlled, empty. I have questions, said. I am sure you do. Ask. The legends say humans died 40,000 years ago, that you sacrificed yourselves to seal away the void devourers, but you are still here. How? Was quiet for a moment. Then she pressed a button on her desk. A hologram appeared between them, showing the galaxy as it had been 40,000 years ago. We knew the seal would not last forever, said. Our scientists calculated it would hold for approximately 40,000 years before weakening. We faced a choice: die with the rest of the galaxy celebrating our sacrifice, or survive and prepare for the day the devourers returned. You chose to survive. We chose to keep our promise. There is a difference, gestured at the hologram. We erased all evidence of our existence. We destroyed our colonies, wiped our records from every database, burned our cities so thoroughly that only dust remained. We wanted the devourers to believe we were gone. If they ever broke free, they would not come looking for us first. And then we hid. We found a region of space far from any star, any planet, any shipping lane. We built stations in the darkness. We put ourselves into cold sleep and set machines to watch over us. Every few centuries, some of us would wake to train, to maintain the ships, to pass knowledge to the next generation. Then we would sleep again. Try to imagine it. 40,000 years of hiding in the dark. 400 generations born and raised with only one purpose. What about your culture? She asked. Your art, your music, your stories. His face did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Something like pain. We could not afford culture. Every resource went to the fleet. Every mind focused on preparation. We taught our children mathematics and warfare and engineering. We taught them duty and sacrifice and patience. We did not teach them to sing or paint or dance. Those things would not help them kill devourers. That is terrible. Yes, it is, looked at directly. We gave up everything that made us human so that we could save humans. By the time we realized the contradiction, it was too late. We had forgotten how to be anything else. A young man entered the room, saluted, and handed a data pad. She read it without expression. The fleet will reach conquered space in 6 days. The devourers are massing at the border. It seems they remember us after all. They are gathering their strength for one final push before we arrive. Can you stop them? Asked Truly. We have spent 40,000 years preparing weapons specifically designed to kill void devourers. We have studied their biology, their tactics, their weaknesses. We have built ships that can hurt them and shields that can block them and bombs that can tear holes in their dimension. Set down the data pad. Yes, we can stop them, but it will cost us greatly. What do you want in return for your help? The question seemed to surprise. She was quiet for a long time. Want, she repeated, as if tasting a strange word. I do not know what we want. We have not wanted anything except victory for so long that wanting has become a foreign concept. She stood and walked to the wall, placing her hand against the cold metal. I suppose we want to rest. When this is over, win or lose, we want to stop fighting, stop preparing, stop being weapons. We want to remember how to be people again. I can help with that, said softly. The conquered can help. If you save us, we will owe you everything. We can teach you the things you forgot. We can give you a home. Did not turn around, but felt something crack in that stone wall around her emotions. Something small and fragile and almost like hope. That would be acceptable, said. But first we have a war to win, and I have a promise to keep. She pressed a button on the wall. Alarms sounded throughout the ship. The human fleet, 10,000 vessels strong, began to accelerate toward the coming darkness. After 40,000 years, the humans were finally going home. The void devourers had gathered at the border in numbers that blocked out the stars. Thousands of the shadow creatures floated in space, their bodies pulsing with stolen energy from the worlds they had consumed. Behind them, a massive tier in reality glowed with sickly purple light. The dimensional rift was growing larger every hour, and more devourers poured through without end. Fleet Admiral stood on her bridge and watched her tactical display with grim acceptance. Her fleet had been reduced to half its original strength. Every battle cost more ships, more lives, more hope. The conquered species were brave, but bravery meant nothing against an enemy that could not be killed. "Admiral," her sensor officer said, "new contacts emerging from hyperspace. 10,000 signatures." Felt her heart stop. 10,000 devourers would end the war in hours. Then the officer's voice changed. "Wait, these are not devourer signatures, they are unknown. Admiral, I am receiving a transmission." The main screen flickered. A human face appeared, old, female, hard as iron. "Fleet Admiral, I am High Commander of the Human Remnant Fleet. We have come to honor an old promise. Please move your ships to the flanks. We will take the center." Could not speak. Around her, crew members stared at the screen with wide eyes. Humans, real humans, the legends made flesh. Admiral prompted. Found her voice. "Understood, Commander, the center is yours." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a tide of dark metal. Their ships were massive, each one bristling with weapons that glowed with strange energy. They moved in perfect formation, 10,000 vessels acting as one. The Void Devourers saw them, and for the first time in the war, the monsters hesitated. His voice echoed across every channel, broadcast to every ship in both fleets and every world in the conquered. 40,000 years ago, we made you a promise. We said we would return when the darkness rose again. We said we would protect you. Today, we keep that promise. Today, debts are paid." The human fleet opened fire. The weapons they used were unlike anything the conquered had ever seen. Beams of light that seemed to burn reality itself. Missiles that exploded into cascades of antimatter. Cannons that fired projectiles moving at nearly the speed of light. Each shot struck a devourer, and each shot left wounds that did not heal. The devourers screamed. It was a sound that existed in dimensions beyond normal hearing, a psychic howl of pain and rage. For the first time in 40,000 years, something was hurting them. They attacked. The battle became chaos. Devourers swarmed the human ships, trying to consume them with shadow tendrils and reality-warping fields. Human weapons blazed without pause, cutting through monster after monster. Ships on both sides died in fire and darkness. Watched from the cockpit of her small fighter. She was a young pilot who had survived the fall of New Dawn, the first colony destroyed. She had sworn revenge that day. Now she flew alongside human pilots, following their formations, learning their tactics. "Stay close," her wingman said. His name was Thomas, a human barely older than her. His voice was calm despite the destruction around them. "We are pushing toward the rift." The rift, why? Because that is where we end this. Archon led his warriors into the thickest fighting. He had spent his whole life dismissing humans as myths, mocking those who believed in legends. Now he watched human ships sacrifice themselves to protect conquered vessels, throwing their bodies between devourers and their allies. He had been wrong about everything. A devourer broke through the lines, heading straight for the human flagship. Did not hesitate. He drove his ship directly into the creature's path, firing every weapon he had. "For the conquered," he roared. "For the humans, for everyone they died to protect." His ship exploded against the devourer's hide. The monster recoiled, wounded, and human guns finished it off. On the flagship's bridge, watched sacrifice with something approaching emotion. She had not felt much of anything for centuries, but watching these strange aliens fight and die beside her people stirred something old and half-forgotten in her chest. "Commander," her tactical officer reported, "the path to the rift is almost clear, but we are taking heavy losses. If we do not act soon, we will not have enough ships left to hold them back." Nodded. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared for it her entire life. "Deploy the anchor," she ordered. Deep in the flagship's hold, a weapon woke from its long sleep. The reality anchor was a device 40,000 years in the making, designed for one purpose: to seal the dimensional rift permanently. But it could not be fired like a normal weapon. Someone had to carry it into the heart of the rift and activate it manually. Someone had to die. "Prepare my shuttle," said. Ambassador, watching from a nearby ship, heard the order. She opened a channel immediately. "Commander, no, there must be another way." "There is not. The anchor requires precise placement. Remote detonation will not work. Someone must carry it through." "Then send someone else. You are the commander, your people need you." Almost smiled. "My people need victory, they do not need me. I have been preparing for this death since I was a child. We all have. This is what it means to be human." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Ambassador, when this is over, take care of my people. Teach them how to live again. Remind them that survival alone is not enough." Before could respond, cut the channel. She walked to her shuttle, climbed inside, and launched toward the rift. Around her, the battle raged. Human and conquered ships fought together against the endless tide of devourers. The path to the rift was narrow and deadly, lined with monsters hungry for her blood. But the humans had waited 40,000 years for this moment. They would not fail now. The rift was beautiful in a terrible way. It hung in space like a wound in the universe, purple and black and pulsing with energy from another dimension. Void devourers poured through it endlessly, shadows given form and hunger. Commander flew toward it alone. Her shuttle was small and fast, designed for exactly this mission. Behind her, the battle continued. Human and conquered ships formed a corridor through the devourer swarm, sacrificing themselves to keep her path clear. She watched them die on her sensors, one light blinking out after another. "Commander," a voice said. It came from the shuttle's computer, but it was not a normal computer voice. It was a keeper, one of the ancient AI constructs that had watched over humanity during the long sleep. This one had been with her since she was born. "I am here," said. "We are approaching the threshold. The anchor is ready, but I must ask you something first." "Ask." "Do you have any regrets?" Thought about the question. She had lived her entire life in service to a promise made before she was born. She had never known peace, never known joy, never known anything but duty. Her childhood was training. Her adulthood was preparation. Her old age was war. "Only one," she said finally. "I never saw Earth, not truly, only pictures, only stories. I spent my whole life protecting what I never touched." The keeper was quiet for a moment, then it spoke again. "Shall I show you?" The shuttle's screen changed. Instead of sensor data and tactical displays, it showed an image of a planet. Blue oceans stretched from horizon to horizon. Green forests covered vast continents. White clouds drifted through a sky the color of morning. Earth, as it had been 40,000 years ago, before the evacuation, before the sacrifice, before humanity turned itself into a weapon. "This is from the old archives," the keeper said. "The last images taken before we left. I have kept them all this time, hopping one day to show them to someone who needed to see." Stared at the image. She felt something wet on her cheeks and realized she was crying. She could not remember the last time she had cried. "It was beautiful," she whispered. "Yes, it was, and perhaps it will be again." The rift loomed ahead, filling the viewport with terrible light. Devourers turned toward her shuttle, sensing the weapon it carried. But they were too late. She was already past the threshold, crossing into the space between dimensions. Inside the rift, reality itself became strange. Colors shifted into spectrums that had no names. Sounds existed without sources. Time moved in loops and spirals. Felt her mind bending under the pressure of a place that should not exist. But she held on. She had trained for this. 400 generations had prepared for this moment. She reached the center of the rift. The anchor was ready. All she had to do was press the button. "Commander," the keeper said, "it has been an honor." "The honor was mine," replied. "Tell my people I kept my promise. Tell them they are free now." She pressed the button. The anchor activated. Reality folded in on itself, closing the wound between dimensions like a healing body rejecting a splinter. The rift collapsed with a flash of light so bright it was visible across the entire galaxy. And last commander of the human remnant fleet finally rested. Outside the rift, the change was immediate. The devourers that had been pouring through suddenly stopped. Cut off from their home dimension, they began to weaken. Their shadow bodies flickered and faded. Their screams grew quiet. The human and conquered fleets did not hesitate. They pressed their attack, hunting down every remaining devourer with weapons that finally worked against dying prey. The battle that had seemed endless became a rout. By morning, it was over. Ambassador stood on the bridge of a human ship and looked out at the stars. The rift was gone, replaced by empty space. The devourers were dead, their bodies dissolving into nothing. The galaxy was saved. But the cost had been terrible. Of the 10,000 human ships that had joined the battle, fewer than 1,000 remained. They drifted in formation, their crews exhausted, their purpose fulfilled. They had won, but they did not know what victory meant anymore. Remembered her promise to take care of my people, teach them how to live again. She called an emergency session of the conquered High Council. Representatives from every surviving species attended, their faces showing shock and gratitude and grief. "We owe the humans everything," said. "They spent 40,000 years preparing to save us. They gave up their culture, their joy, their humanity itself to keep a promise they did not have to keep. And now they have nothing left but their ships and their memories of sacrifice." "What do you propose?" asked a council member. Took a breath. "I propose we give them Earth. We have the technology to restore dead worlds. We can bring back the oceans, the forests, the life. We can give them a home again. A real home, not a weapon or a fortress or a hiding place. A place where they can finally stop fighting and start living." The council voted immediately. The decision was unanimous. 1 year later, stood on a hillside on Earth and watched the first rain fall on soil that had been dust for 40. Human ships had landed across the planet, their crews stepping onto ground their ancestors had left so long ago. Many of them wept. Some of them laughed. A few simply stood and breathed air that smelled of growing things instead of recycled oxygen. 12 had kept its promise too. The old machine had come to Earth with archives full of human history, human art, human music. It played songs for people who had never heard music. It showed paintings to people who had forgotten color. It told stories to people who had only known duty. Slowly, carefully, the humans began to remember what they had lost. Found a young human girl sitting alone on a rock, looking up at the sky. The girl could not have been more than 10 years old, the first generation born after the war. She had never known the long sleep or the endless preparation. She had been born free. "What are you looking at?" asked. The girl pointed upward. "The stars. My grandmother told me we used to be afraid of them. We used to watch them every night waiting for enemies to come, but I am not afraid. I think they are pretty." Sat down beside her. Above them, the sky was full of lights, distant suns, distant worlds, a galaxy that would exist for billions of years because a small species from this small planet had refused to let it die. "They are pretty," agreed, "and they are safe now because of your people." The girl smiled. It was a real smile, full of innocent joy, the kind of smile that no human had smiled for 400 generations. "Good," she said. "Then I can just enjoy them." Smiled too. The humans had guarded the galaxy so long they had forgotten they were part of it. They had given up everything to keep their promise. Now, at last, they could finally stop watching the darkness and start enjoying the light.